Thanks, Nick. Oh, hello there, Nick. Nick, I got your thanks. Hello, hello. It's nice to see ya. Yes, it is Nick. Nick from YouTube. By the way, I love your avatar. Very on YouTube. So Kyanseru. Kyanseru is also a suru. Oh my goodness. Wait. You know, let's look at cancel. Is there to cancel to withdraw? Oh, okay. So it's kind of like oversight. Wow, they're really leaning in on the sudo stuff. What the heck? I guess. Does it feel like Japanese is getting easier over time? Like the grammar is making more sense? Yeah. Well, for Duolingo, the grammar moves very slowly. So you have plenty of time to look at all the patterns for grammar. So I use Tofuku as a source of grammar curiosities. So generally by the time you get to it, it's more about how interesting it is, more so than this is wow, I don't get this yet kind of thing. Duo does the thing where hey, here's how you used it before and then here's how you use it now. Have I ever utilized a tutor? You utilize one and enjoyed it a lot? Like you utilize a tutor? A person? Or are we talking about like something mechanical? I haven't utilized a person, no. But I have participated. I in the evening outside of Duolingo, I use comprehensible input with like vlogs and reading and listening, and then occasionally, for maybe like once or twice a week, I partake in immersion, in total immersion. But those are because of curiosity, not so much comprehension. A person that is happy to chat with you and teach you Japanese. Yeah. I'm not at that quite there yet. I already set myself at a conservative 6 months, and we might transition into something perhaps in that way to some extent. But I am my own tutor for the most part. I use internal monologue and internal dialogue to create the immersion space most of the time. Yeah, for now, I'm using comprehensible inputs as my evening rituals outside of Duolingo. And then I occasionally, once a week, I watch anime with friends, but I use it as an opportunity to use total immersion, as in because I can't usually dictate the level of the anime. So those are the kind of the moments where like, whatever, 40%, 30%, pick up a random vocabulary here and there. That's total immersion life for you. And then most of the other days, I'm doing oh, thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Appreciate the sub. How are you with Japanese? I didn't get an opportunity to ask you because, the video comment sections would be extraordinarily long, right? But how are you with Japanese? And are you multilingual too? And like, what is your? I need some details. You gotta give me some details, some saucy details. Right, since I love Duolingo and concept, I see. Like, how is it going with you? Like, I imagine you said you already mentioned tutor, so you got me peaked. Obviously, you're a person who also take holistic approaches. You're currently learning Mandarin with a tutor. Oh, interesting. So you're already at the experience level of Japanese, right? So you're at a position where you use Japanese to learn Japanese. So you're already moved on to the experience accumulation, and then now you're learning Mandarin. I'm still at the comprehensible input stage, but once I reach a point where I can constructively use Japanese to learn Japanese, then I'll likely move on to Mandarin as well. I'll be joining you hopefully sometime. Wait, far down the line. It's gonna be like another 90 days probably before I join Mandarin. There's a lot of Japanese Mandarin clubs right now. Like I have a few people who are at the interface of Japanese and Mandarin. Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to talk about this, by the way. I'm Chinese. I have a Chinese background. So, I'm a total immersion baby product of Mandarin and Fujianese. So, it's going to be a very different approach and concept approaching Mandarin. So, it will be very, very different for the Mandarin thing. And then after that, it's Spanish, which will go even more differently because I wasn't a product of immersion for Spanish. I was a product of young formal education. So when I was still much, much younger, I learned Spanish formally. So that's going to be a totally different thing too. You initially only used Duolingo to learn, but believe that my accountability is not good enough to self-teach myself. I see. And then you branched out. You discovered that a tutor, like you wanted some more accountability. So you branched out to things like tutor to make up for it. Yeah, that sounds like you knew exactly where you're going. Took the feedback and went with it. Very nice. Therefore, you met with a tutor online twice a week and learned in a more structured approach. Yeah, very nice. Very nice. I know someone who is Lotus is in here, and it's already too late for him, so he probably logged off for the day. But Lotus has spent many years self-teaching, and then now he like occasionally meet up with someone from italki to as that type of structure too, to interact with someone else who is knowledgeable about the language. Since they set me homework and I have to complete it to not look like a fool the next thing. Yeah, accountability is it's great when some, you know, an outside force can nudge you, right? Nudge you for sure. I don't know Japanese and I'm just a native English speaker from Australia. Oh, you're Australian? Oh, I have so many questions, but all I'm thinking about right now is all the words you're talking about now just immediately sounds Australian to me. I can't impersonate an Australian, but all I can say now is visibly in my head now, I'm reading all your messages in an Australian accent. Sorry, I mean, I love accents, so I mean, I wouldn't be so into language if I didn't love accents. I mean, some people hate accents, I suppose. They learn language to get rid of them. But career-wise, you love to utilize your Mandarin on a daily basis, but need to reach at least... Oh, HSK. Yeah, someone mentioned that already. The standardized criteria. So wait. So you don't know Japanese? Oh, dang it! I thought we could bond with Mandarin and Japanese. No. It's fine. It's fine. No pressure. No pressure. Is Mandarin your... Okay, so Mandarin is your second language acquisition, right? Or do you have a third one? I don't know. Or do you have some sort of Australian dialect? I have no idea if Australians have dialects. The closest thing I've gotten to Australia is I studied abroad in New Zealand, and I know it's not the same thing, but there is technically you know, in the Maori population, so I was exposed to that language as well when I was there. But I don't know about Australia. I don't know enough about Australia to know if there's some sort of pocket. By the way, since you know Mandarin, you have thought about learning Japanese, but I am determined to prioritize. That's fair. That's perfectly fair. I actually almost did a coin flip for Mandarin and Japanese. Which, by the way, how much Mandarin have you been digging? Because I don't know if you've ever met a Fujianese person before. I myself am not a Fujianese person, but my parents are Fujianese. So I'm second gen, so I'm the first generation raised in the United States. So, however, my Fujianese is a product of immersion. So a lot of times I can't discern whether I'm transitioning between Mandarin, Cantonese, or Fujianese when I'm speaking. Country people and city people have really different accents. Okay, that's fair enough. But there's no dialects. Okay. I didn't want to assume because I know the cliche from the outside is Australia is a really big landmass. But at the same time, when I look at its population density, I suppose it's kind of more of an Alaska situation, if I'm to be so bold. But not in the sense, not to the extreme, but not to quite extreme, but the landmass is disproportionate with your distribution. So I'm not sure if there was a lot of opportunities for geographical like isolation where you get dialectic development in Australia. In China, since you're learning Mandarin, I imagine you have become already aware that Mandarin is the title for the collective of dialectic families, and the dialectic families are nearly unintelligible to each other. So I speak Fujianese. My parents are from the Fujian province. So they're both they air from Fuzhou. So I speak Fujianese. I'm an immersion baby product of Fujianese. So I speak it, but I am completely illiterate because I have no educational background in Mandarin or anything Mandarin related. I've seen someone speak in a video once. Yeah, it is a rare dialect outside of China. It is a decreasing dialect in China because of, how the Chinese government works. Enforcement is incredibly, it's a different world, right, in China. So its dialect is decreasing in China. However, it's not rare to that region. Outside of the United States, it's almost non-existent because every third or fourth generation that dialect disappears because there's no formal schooling. I wouldn't even call myself bilingual since I'm illiterate. I don't know how people qualify linguistics, but like, for example, I'm not, since you're almost really competent in Mandarin, I can say a few phrases like "ni hao." You can probably relate it to Mandarin to pick up what I just said. So there are phrases that are kind of similar, like "ni hao," "ni hao." You might be able to guess. I'm trying to think of things that get confused with Mandarin, like I don't think Dao is close enough. Dao is not close enough. Sorry is not the same either. I think the closest, yeah. Nihon is probably the closest because it's how are you. Although Fujianese people usually don't say, they ask if you've eaten. So ni siromoi. Ni siromoi. What is the Mandarin again? Ni tsurama. Ni tsurama. Yeah. Ni siromoi. Ni siromoi. Have you eaten? That would be the greeting. Right. When you greet someone, it's like, have you eaten? Ni siromoi. Yeah, I think it's ni tsurama is the Mandarin. Sometimes I get it confused with Cantonese, so excuse me if somehow when I say I think I'm speaking Mandarin, it ends up being Cantonese. Like for example, "你講乜嘢?" 你講乜嘢？你講什麼？你講什麼？你講乜嘢? Which is Cantonese, I think. Which is, what did you say? What did you say? Because I say that a lot sometimes. You have to say that, like, in case you didn't catch someone, like, what did you just say? Right? Or what did you say? Right? I don't know if they shorten it. I feel like Cantonese would be like, 你講乜? No. Probably 你講乜嘢? I don't know what the Mandarin phrase is. 你說什麼? Yeah, 你說什麼? I think that's Mandarin. 你說什麼? Versus 你講乜嘢? And then 你講什麼? Right? I say that is the Mandarin Chinese equivalent. I have dabbled in Cantonese and your pronunciation sounds similar to what I've seen. Ah, okay. Yeah. Here's a fun thing. I know I'm digressing even more now, but sometimes Fujianese sometimes they adopt Canto phrases versus Mandarin phrases. So that's why there's a confusion for myself a lot of times, because I'm not quite sure. Like, for example, yesterday in Duolingo, we were talking about nabe. So nabe, oh, I totally forgot about, that's one of the vocabulary I learned yesterday and I didn't recall it. Now I do. Nabe. So nabe is, Duolingo introduced it as hot pot, but that's the difference. That's different from shabu shabu. Shabu shabu is what I refer to as hot pot. So nabe is cooking in a hot pot, and shabu shabu is the hot pot, which is the hua guo. But in Cantonese is dabeno, and dabenu. Dabenu is Fujianese. Dabenu. So Fujianese in this case adopted Cantonese a lot more than Mandarin. So instead of hua guo, no, it's hua guo, and da beno versus, and then the Fujianese is da benu, which all came back to Japanese. Nabe being translated as hot pot, but it's really, the thing that I was imagining is shabu shabu. Fun, huh? Fun. Yep. 你说什么? Yeah, 你说什么? Oh, 你说 Oh, that means how are you doing? Oh, man. Ooh. I've heard Japanese adopts Mandarin Chinese. It does. So to hear that Fujianese adopts, yeah. So it's all jumbled up. So I would totally love to hear like stuff in Mandarin all the time. Like when I have to Google Translate it, because most of the only way I understand Mandarin is through audio, because I have no literacy competence, and I hope to remove that in the future. As in that's my goal, like maybe in another 3 or 4 months, right? So most of the time people would tell me like Mandarin phrases, or hey, in Japanese this is like the Chinese, and then I look up the Chinese and Google translates, oh yeah, that is what that is. Exactly. Yeah, and I can't construct it out of thin air most of the time in Mandarin. For like Mandarin and Cantonese, I can't construct it out of the thin air most of the time. I can mimic a lot better than I can construct. So when I hear the phrase, I can probably imitate it. Instead of in Japanese, I have to practice pronouncing everything. I still have to practice pronouncing everything constantly to get used to producing the various sounds and whichever pitch it's required and all that stuff. But to say 你好吗, that means are you good? How are you? Yeah. when I said nisiromoi, nisiromoi, it's interpreted as how are you as well, even though it literally means did you eat yet. But nisiromoi, it's kind of like Japanese has the same similar things like yoroshiku, irashaimase, right? There are a lot of the greeting ones are lost in translation, right? They're not translatable. So nisiro moi, I keep telling people like it's literally saying how have you eaten, but my parents are greeting you. They're really just asking you how are you, like how you're doing, but they're also curious if you want to eat something. Thanks for chatting. It's great to talk to someone that also likes language, and I aim to not steer you away from your goal. Hey, guess what my goal is, Nick? This is it. I really appreciate your candor. I wasn't kidding when I really mentioned that I think the major priority is to get people enthusiastic about the language. Language learning comes naturally when you're having discussions and talking all the time, right? Like, I can't really prioritize, like, it's such a drop in the bucket for the mechanical understanding and the intellectual, like, raw understanding of a language versus participating in conversation about the language. Your study is bolstered by the enthusiasm that you built around language learning. What drove me to learn Japanese? That's a fun thought. I have been exposed to 2 languages in my life, predominantly outside of English, and that is Japanese and any form of Mandarin, right? Japanese pervasively pretty much encompasses so much of my cultural background exposure, so naturally Japanese would come to the forefront. I kind of arranged it in the way that why Japanese before Mandarin is because Japanese is the most distant of it. And I feel that if I can challenge myself to engage in something that is most distant, then I can reform and take a lot of those learning lessons and apply them to something that is less distant so that I can kind of work backwards in a sense. So why now is another question that people ask. I have an immediate family member, a sibling now that lives in Japan. So there's a pragmatic reason to pick up the language that my parents might find a little bit impractical knowing its reach, but hey, and all the stars align. I want to take a break from video games because I try to use video games as a learning platform, but that didn't quite work out. So all the stars align to Japanese in that sense. I will unequivocally acquire and reacquire and relearn in the next 5 years Japanese, Mandarin, and Spanish. That is probably the lofty goal of the future, but it's probably not the traditional sense in which you force yourself and schedule yourself into mechanical intellectual understanding. I like to take a holistic approach to learning. Your motivation is to discover what other people are saying around me. I also love the character designs. Do you, what type of exposure do you have to Chinese culture right now? I'm curious. Have you interacted with at least multicultural Chinese people? I imagine there are multicultural, like Australian Chinese people that you probably had opportunities to engage with directly. So one of the reasons is so you can connect with siblings more. Yes, yeah. My sister and I are the product of a Chinese household, so a traditional Chinese household, so we're kind of distant. Kind of. In Sydney, there's an abundance of Chinese immigrants and businesses. Interesting. Have you ever seized the opportunity of finding an acquaintance, maybe turn friend in a maybe even in a multilingual language exchange kind of thing, to like go beyond your current state of mind in terms of scholastic education, right? Like make it even more sentimental. I obviously, as a minority, my perspective is flipped. I usually am engaging in that language exchange already most of the time, or cultural exchange most of the time. You also went to, oh, you went to an international university where very few Chinese students spoke English in class. Did not lose face, I assume. Yeah. And I imagine you mean by Chinese student, you mean international students, right? You can definitely pick up the difference between second generation Chinese students and first generation Chinese students. First generation being the immigrants, the ones that are international or native to, yeah, because it is a world of difference. At least in the culture, you know, the Australian culture is part of the like the colonial period, and I'm in the United States, and you can pick up if you see a person who appears Chinese, their mannerisms really give away if they're second generation or first generation. It's actually a point of contention between the two because it's a cultural dissonance. Face culture is huge for first generation. I'm second generation, by the way, so obviously I make a buffoon out of myself in public all the time and be relatively secure about it. You practice all the ways to bolster your own confidence and master your own insecurities and fears of the what I would call the fear of disappointment, the face culture fear of disappointment. Yeah, I tend to digress in the whole idea of Asian excellence may be supported indirectly by their aptitude, but I think it pales in comparison to the fear that is generated from a face culture. The fear of disappointment is what drives Asian consistency in their culture. They're to the point where even their entire language is structured around being polite and appropriate to remove misunderstanding. Learning Japanese encapsulates a lot of that culture. Their language itself is predicated on maintaining this face culture. And growing up in the United States, it's incredibly endearing to see how people unapologetically fall over and get back up. So while my parents might not resonate with that, I am definitely second generation. I embrace being able to resonate with people who are fearless in terms of trying and making mistakes and bettering themselves, as opposed to constantly be buried by the insecurities of not getting it right the first time. Ironically, though, that's kind of what's gripping a lot of people who are part of the internet generation. So I tend to use like language learning or video games as a way to bridge that gap, because it's kind of almost alarming how the internet has fostered a face culture that's almost as unsustainable as the Asian cultures, like the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Korean culture specifically, of what I have personal contact with. It's to the point where now people want to always get things right the first time, and they are so insecure about that they are incapable of a lot of times even starting the task, which is legitimately and so ironically and coincidentally aligned with what is facing Chinese people, Japanese people, and Korean people about certain things. And I just recently talked to a few people about relationships. Interpersonal relationships are one of the hardest stages, in my opinion, or face culture. It's interpersonal relationships are one of the most nebulous and inconsistent parts. And imagine having to do that in a society that focuses on face, where you have to say face every single day if you enter a interpersonal contract with another person. So it's a slight of a deep cut, but I like talking about the cultural dissonances between Asian, like specific aspects of Asian culture and Western culture, and the intersect in which they reach like compromises, especially if you're born of East meets West, like myself. I'm in ABC. I'm an American born Chinese, so I would have to navigate that all the time. I see. I need to respect the differences. Apologies. I mean, students that were born and lived in China before visiting us, Australia. No worries. No apologies necessary. I think the funny thing about this is it's legitimately the opposite when it comes to people not being specific, because I think that is exactly why you are the way you are, which is very acceptable. I don't think feeling sorry for something you couldn't possibly resonate with, right? But I really appreciate the sentiment. I highly encourage people not to be apologetic. It's kind of, I don't know if you ever watch comedy, stand up, like the rare like Asian American or Asian Australian or something stand up comedian. It's often the opposite. It's like, it's not. How could anyone reasonably expect someone who is not born and constantly reminded of that thing to be aware of those things, right? So no need to feel apologetic. I think you're well more cultured about this. You probably know a lot more about the Mandarin language than I do myself. I mean, be realistic about that. I see and I've heard similar things from the interest in the past. I aim to be more careful before assuming. Nah, you're good. I honestly think nowadays the little goobers, right? Gen Zs, most of Gen Zs and most of Gen Alpha now, they're growing up in a really real situation that places me at a place where I can resonate with them. So my childhood is not exactly identical to their context, but their emotional status and their mental mindsets, fueled by the objectivity online, is incredibly mirrored by what happens in a Asian household, specifically Chinese, Japanese, and Korean household prior to the internet. And it's a struggle. And here I am learning Duolingo and telling people like life is very long, and sometimes try not to worry too much about getting it right the first time, especially with a life skill like language learning or talking like this, right, Nick? Like I do not want to encourage people to be apologetic or intimidated by basically being aware of what their cultural background is. How do you, overcome insecurities about expression and miscommunication? You communicate. So if you're constantly worried and concerned about saying the right thing the first time, that often means both sides are exercise intolerance and incapable of, communicating, right? At least that's my opinion. I don't know if that represents the majority of Americans, but for myself, I expect people to say whatever is on their mind, honestly, because if we don't say what's on our mind, then it might as well not be said at all, in my opinion, because you're skirting around expression. So then both parties don't get practice in communication, right? Yeah, stand-up comedians, there's that truth, and that's kind of how I feel about it. Not that others will feel the same, but for myself. Not sure if you have already explained this, But is it the only reason you're learning Japanese is to deepen your understanding of other cultures and connect with your students? Or do you have plans career-wise for the speaking proficiency tests, perhaps? No, that's it. I live in a very privileged situation where I have some borrowed time. So, I'm doing the natural thing that I used to do as a kid, only with the more romantic and public practice side of things. I acquire skills and I demonstrate how I acquire those skills. So naturally, the only motivation required is sentimentalism. So there isn't any like pragmatic shackles yet. There used to be shackles on my career-wise, but nowadays, being very privileged, for the time being, I have the privilege of being unshackled. So now I'm just learning anything that my sentimentalism guides me. So in this case, deepening my understanding with other cultures and connecting with my sibling is more or less the only motivation for it. It is the sentimentalism. I spent more than 2/3 of my life pursuing pragmatic goals, and those pragmatic goals have taught me a few, but one of the bigger life lessons is that legacy, satisfaction, and happiness does not coincide with a purely pragmatic take on career building, life building, and like self-love in general. So nowadays, when someone asks me what motivates me, other people. Just other people. When someone says they really, really hate this movie, I want to watch that movie just to see how much they hate it. Like, I want to know. I want to know. Maybe I won't hate it as much, but the idea is I'm seeking all this borrowed time to maximize my ability to sample as many things as I can. However, if I can give you some tenuous connection to career move, I'm collecting experience because I believe my future, how I turn this in is I want to be like a communication specialist or like a kind of like a executive function coach or something. Someone that deals with a lot of people in a lot of situations and stay relevant topically on certain things and tasks. So the more experience I gain in situations like language learning and bouncing around and grabbing sentimentalisms, the more experience I gain in handling and coaching and mentoring people. My professional career was aimed at the goal of being a teacher, an educator of one day, but the formal education system is it's pragmatically slow, right? It's appropriately slow, but it doesn't reach the pace that I really desired. So I like the dynamics of individualized one-on-one help versus trying to standardize something that can appeal for a lot of people. That stuff is often not moving at the pace. So like language learning, if you ask someone what is the most efficacious way to language learning, I'm sure when you hand wave superficially, they might come to some particular points, like maybe 4 or 5 points. However, then you're asked, what does that process look like? And all chaos breaks loose, right? That is the unfortunate paradox of standardized education. Standardized education, it takes a very long time to standardize, and by the time it's standardized, you're might not sure if it's contextually relevant anymore. So for me, I've moved on from trying to reach millions of people or hundreds of people at least in a formal education system that is probably on a standard that hasn't been revised for 2 decades plus, right? Like the American formal education system, to a more of a case-by-case thing. And this is how I'm going to demonstrate it. I suppose. That's like way down the line. I really do see myself as a like a 40, 50-year-old man offering day by day individual guidance for executive function in the future. It seems that you've already taken action to utilize your Japanese journey to communicate with other people on stream and create something that is relevant to it. Yeah, that's the goal. It will be a lot easier to make a case for certification and maybe credibility if I actually do the things that I say I do myself, right? If you know what I mean. So for the longest time, I keep saying in video games, oh, I do this stuff and learning, but it was very hard to demonstrate in video games because there's this like pre-selection for oversimplification and intuiting video games. So naturally, I moved to a harder thing, or like a quote unquote more stronger pre-selection gate, which language learning is adjacent to that. I love Japanese video games. Guess what? In the future, I'll be playing Japanese video games in Japanese. I like to maximize the skills. If I am ever mentoring someone, like life coaching someone, it's about condensing and making all of your actions efficaciously overlapping. So if you need to rest for language, or maybe you need to watch an ad, make that ad time functional to you. You might be able to watch ads to learn how to advertise while you're doing the thing you're doing while waiting on the advertise. You know what I mean? So you can understand what the Japanese voice actors are saying. That's also one of my motivations. Oh, do you consume Chinese content? Do you watch cop dramas? Do you watch kung fu movies? Because, yo, I have a very long. Do you watch Journey to the West? By the way, are you a fan of Journey to the West? Sorry, I'm gonna nerd out a little bit, but let's not nerd out too much. We'll save the discussions. Ooh, what time is it in Australia? What time is it in Australia? Even learning Korean to understand League of Legends casters. Oh, wow, that's a deep cut. So you watch the LCS, huh? I used to habitually watch the LCS when I played in like the first like 11 seasons of League of Legends. Awesome. Oh, LCK. Oh yeah, fair. LCK, sure. Yeah, specifically LCK. Yeah. I remember they localized there. LCS puts you to sleep. Yeah, I was referring to the parental organization that gave birth to the, to the rest of the organizations. But yeah, LCK. Yeah. So you're still into League of Legends, huh? Now I'm starting to gain a profile of you. Yeah, I tend to refer to the parental organization a lot of times, but I keep forgetting that they sense. Yeah, a lot of time. Actually, did they have more now? I'm out of the League of Legends scene for a while now. So you're not a Valorant person, huh? All right. Let me get.
デートをキャンセルします。
cancel. cancel します。You don't play any games at the moment? I prefer to direct my time to my goals only. That's fair enough. Do you have it? So is that all you do? Or do you do something professionally? Also relates to acquiring a second language. Being someone who watches LCK, and then the comments you made, you are already probably. I would be surprised if you aren't a decade younger than me. However, you did seek tutoring, and your approach to learning is very realistic. So I would probably put you in mid-20s. That's a wild guess because I would need to collect more details. But if I had to take a jab, mid-20s. You're a bartender at the moment, did a degree in software engineering. Ah, you're 26? Yeah. I was aiming right at 25 actually. Yeah. And I'm a decade older than you. I'm 37. So I'm a little over a decade older than you. We belong to a different generation. But that just comes from like sampling. I was just applying some experience from constantly observing and communicating with people and their interest. But just the way you talk, the way you assess things, I already imagined that you would have a college degree of some sort because of the way you talk, right? Your diction and whatnot. So you have to be older than 22. That was where I drew the bottom line. You were as young as 22, but you can't be older than 30 based on that. I enjoy comp sci in high school, but don't like the idea of isolating myself in a room all day and staring at a screen. That's fair. That's great self-awareness. Therefore, I'm exploring Mandarin and willing to take chances. You've already reached a romantic lifestyle that prevented you from a midlife crisis with burnout. Sorry if that was too deep. That escalated, but that is kind of why I'm doing this. There's a lot of other whys, but one of the things is to get to illustrate to talk about a lot of the red flags that burnout can look like. And one of the burnouts you just described, the idea of isolating yourself in a pursuit of a career is a great recipe for burnout and alone and a midlife crisis. And the faster you burn out, since you're in your 20s, you belong to the previous generation, and they burn out right about, like, a bit on average right before their 30s. I actually burn out that time too, so I kind of held on for a lot longer, but I burned out around my 30s. I understand that I'll be 50 one day and certain opportunities won't be available to you. Therefore, you're realizing it's okay to take risks and just go for things. You sound like a spry young man. And I like that. I think youth is beautiful. It's incredibly beautiful. However, youth in Asian cultures might not be as beautiful. So you are very much, for however you want to take this, you are very Australian. You are very Western culture, and I would give you the green flag because of that. If you're hyper objective, it's a burnout, man. Burnout is so strong. It's easier said than done, of course, indeed. And right now I'm just aiming to not give up in life. Yeah, I can understand that. Especially if you're having this encounter with me now on a random stranger's stream, right? Meeting randomly through a YouTube algorithm, then you're already pre-selected for a lot of behavior that the things I say, I've rehearsed a lot of times, because in order for this meeting to happen, like right now, this conversation we're having, you have a lot of criteria that would probably resonate with what I say. And it's largely because I practice a lot of these things. I'm used to hearing and seeing a lot of these things. And yeah, I'm so happy that you're not giving up on life. I can't tell you how many different ways I've heard giving up on life. Like not those literal words, but there are so many different ways I've heard them. And it's often the internet generation. Seem very articulate in what you say, so your rehearsing checks out. Yeah. I don't get tired of telling people, like, hey, and this is a true story, by the way. You're 19. Go out, do something. Pick something you like. Maybe find a point of enthusiasm. Don't just stay in your bed all day. Stop looking at your ceiling all day. That 1 hour you're staring at your ceiling, take 5 minutes of that, step outside. I know it burns for the first time. Like, the sun's gonna burn you like you're a vampire, but go outside, take a walk, come back. 5 minutes. Give it 5 minutes. Come back. Tell me what you think of the sun. Actually, just tell me for 5 minutes how it burns your face or your burns your face or head. At least I can tell you've done something different today. Be proud of yourself. Do I have a PhD in a subject? I do. I have a PhD in biology. A lot of times when someone asks me what does the PhD stands for, the PhD stands for critical thinking, problem solving in a complicated subject matter. So that involves communication that's required to disseminate important information, communication necessary to bridge multidisciplinary collaborations, and then in order to graduate, you must present your thesis work to a group of peers and possibly unintelligible people at the same time. So usually, in order to be a successful doctorate, you are required to have some elevated advancement in communication and teaching. So it goes hand in hand. It's to the point where when you go to graduate school, at least in the United States, you don't even get teaching classes. Like, they're not expecting you. So mileage may vary. However, I prioritize teaching and communication as a way for me to basically get my doctorate degree. My research was not that great. It did not go so well. But ultimately, being able to disseminate all these and communicate and problem shoot through all the hurdles, that's pretty much what a PhD stands for, in my opinion. I'm lucky to have a close relationship with 2 brothers, so you're privileged. Spoken like a really wonderful, self-aware person. I've always counted the ways I'm privileged, and knowing how I'm privileged, I like to leverage that privilege in order to invest forward. If my privilege is constantly giving me excess, reinvesting that excess, whatever it is, sentimentalism, energy, maybe even money. I think money is like flat the most superficial resource you could reinvest. If you can reinvest your energy, your enthusiasm into another person, that is an investment forward that will pay back in dividends if you're more of an objective person. So privilege comes in many forms, and for me, I have privilege borrowed time. So I'm going to use something to inspire something, right? You just don't know. One day you could be that person that stops someone from giving up on life, and that is worth it. Even through a parasocial relationship. I have no idea who may or may not hear this message, but don't give up on life, especially when you're not even 20 years old yet, in my opinion. Biology, you have a soft spot for science and being able to use critical thinking to understand and explain the subject so deeply. Did you have a strong academic standing during high school or a developed mindset afterwards? I've talked about this a little bit from time to time, but there are a lot of people online that feel like they're hyper stimulated all the time. I was a high functioning person prior to the internet age, so I had to manage. I'm going to say conservatively, I don't think I'm that dysfunctional. However, even before the internet generation, without the lack of stimulation, exceeding stimulation, I've often considered myself a high functioning person. So in terms of academic standing, it was having high academic standing took like 2% of my attention. A lot of times it dealt with mental stressors, dysfunctional dysfunctional compulsions that I don't understand at the moment, and emotional irregularities, and being in an emotionally compromised state all the time, and socially awkward. I was poorly socially adapted. That was probably easily the most relatable type of thing that I use to resonate with the current generation. I was incredibly socially isolated, incredibly high functioning, but could not resonate with the people of my age group until much later. You know, as you approach adulthood, other adults around you start to catch up with the stuff. But the idea is, my childhood was void of the things that other people experience. So it naturally I became very distant with people my generation. However, I leveraged that alienation, social awkwardness, and high functioning stories to resonate with the current generations. The current generation has this predisposition, or you might call it a predisposition, but ultimately I am who I am today because of that. So I like to maybe use that opportunity to grind things and play video games at an older age, but really to connect to a smaller age, because I care about the next generation of people. And I already talked about my aspirations to possibly start a family someday. One day, perhaps. Feel free to let me know if you want to resume grinding Duolingo at any time. I just really enjoy talking with you. That's the goal. That's the goal, Nick. Once I suck you in, I'm gonna make you pay me tens of thousands. No, I'm just kidding. I hope I'm not keeping you up. I asked you what time is it in Australia, because I don't want to give people the I don't want to make people feel obligated beyond their daily schedule. Right. That's awesome to hear someone else's perspective and experience during high school. Based on your explanation, you being a high functioning person makes sense. After finishing high school, I feel like I could have dug deep and achieved high marks. However, I feel that there must be a reason I didn't, and regret nothing. I see. Oh, you're free for a few hours? Oh, okay. Well, it is currently... Oh, that's kind of funny. You are... Wait, how does this work? It's 1:55 p.m. May 13th, right? Yeah. That's right. So you are 14 hours ahead of me. Okay, you're 14 hours ahead of me. So it is almost midnight for me. Almost. We were planning to do Chinese studies, and this is kind of relevant. Oh, okay. Yeah. A lot of the things I say, if you know how to appreciate that and bridge that type of discussion, lots of people would be open to that, in my opinion, in a more personal sense. What I mean is, this is a type of dialogue we're entering that is incredibly relatable, but in my opinion, in the privacy of one's own home. So I myself have not gone to China before. However, I can definitely vividly tell you that these types of discussions occur a lot in both first generation and second generation Asians, when they talk about this type of societal pressure and possibly even high functioning situations, or needing to be high functioning. I think on the internet, what the internet have done is to demonstrate that it can happen to anyone. You can be hyperstimulated even without having to be high functioning. The difference here, at least in my opinion, not to say that it's more of a blessing in disguise kind of thing. I think I can offer managerial skills in regulating and moderating a sustainable lifestyle with too much stimulation, because as a kid, I developed these strategies for myself before the internet was already hyper stimulating. Nowadays, I think everyone's experiencing a unprecedented level of stimulation, and it's revealing something that's actually socially normal for a human being. When a human being is overly stimulated, they still have dysfunctional and compulsory behavioral problems in their lifestyles that are not manageable at the time. It doesn't take a high functioning person to see that. However, back in my day, back in the youth days, something hyper stimulating like Facebook and TikTok and YouTube Shorts were not a thing. So I guess I can count my blessing that I'm not a high functioning person growing up now in the internet stage. So those people who are high functioning are even more exaggeratedly dysfunctional now, because they can't regulate how they're taking their stimulation. It means it's to the point where they could talk themselves out of anything. They could talk themselves into a circle and not doing anything. I think the statistical average person is capable of doing that. And I personally think the average person has a chance of healthily navigating the internet thing. I can't even imagine what it's like for a high functioning person who isn't an adult already and learn how to manage these compulsions. Have I ever been to Japan? No, I have not, but soon. Yeah, so I cannot even begin to anticipate how much stimulation it will be to travel to another country. The only time I've traveled technically outside of the North American continent was New Zealand, and I studied abroad in New Zealand for it's like 3 or 4 months. It was for a semester. Is that a semester? Yes. I guess it would be considered a semester. That's what you mean by pre-internet age. I see. You've deleted TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. If I want to post something, I can re-download them. Otherwise, I get sucked into scrolling. Yeah. I'm not saying that, a lot of things, maybe a little bit more about this. A lot of things people have been talking about. I'm probably going to segment this now that I've digressed quite a bit. People have started thinking like, oh, maybe I'm high functioning, or maybe I'm, for lack of a better word, maybe I'm on the spectrum, right? But I actually think they're stronger than pre-selection. When the average person, any neurotypical person is hyperstimulated, you will get to the point where it is excess and dysfunctional. So it may feel like that. So I feel now, even more so, being able to provide some way to regulate that by indirect inspiration, like watching other people, how they manage. How do you manage burnout? What does that look like? How do you manage burning out on language learning, even though you love language learning, for example? Things like that. I think the internet is working on that. There are a lot of people out there that I personally love hearing, where they are in interviews and stuff and talk about how people are capable of incredible things. They have to moderate that stuff. Like, it's very hard to moderate that stuff. Kind of like when you said you deleted TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook and use a pragmatic approach to use them when necessary. That is kind of great. That's a kind of an extreme case where you like immediately delete them. You could bar them from yourself, but deleting them definitely is one form of measure. Same, you've only been to New Zealand, and I'm planning to go to China in November. Ooh, I can't wait to hear your journey in November. How long will you be going for? I imagine you have to apply for some sort of visa, so a couple months, or are you doing like a business related thing? All right, I will provide I will try to finish some of these prompts. Say, I'm going to cancel the date. Feels bad, man.
デート
Although I don't think dato distinguishes between an appointment and a personal date. Let me listen to this again.
デートをキャンセルします
cancel キャンセルします。
ピクニックをキャンセルします。
What would be your most favorite game ever? I've just seen your list in your bio. Oh, my favorite game ever? Okay. All right. This is gonna sound... are you ready for this? I'm sure you're ready for this at this point. I've had this question a lot. So, when I am asked about favorite things, there's a long answer and a short answer. So the short answer is in excellent, I'm just gonna put an excellent experience from the most recent events. That is a short answer. So in terms of games, it would be Dave the Diver. And it will change the next time I have an excellent experience. The long answer is that life is a journey. No, this is a short answer too. It's a longer issue. Life is a journey. Also, memory is it works along this thing. Memory is fluid. So some of the most richest experiences you have are the ones closest to your present. And then having the prospect in life of life is a journey is often to focus on the present. Peer into the future. And my phrase would be integrate your past. So that the present experience that you have is a culmination of all the things you hold dear in the present. So when I play a new video game, I bring all my past favorites into the video game. And that in itself will constitute as the most favorite game. So I think of favorites as whatever is able to culminate everything that's in my past, mostly, like as much as my past, into the current present experience. Because memory and emotions, when it comes to like favorite and subjectivity, is most vivid in the present. So I could name a few, like Dave the Diver, right? Dave the Diver reminds me of all the indie games that I absolutely love. So it captures it's like a best of hits of 20 plus years of indie games. So inevitably it captures everything in the present, which was last year. Or actually it might have been earlier this year. It's earlier this year. And it integrates pretty much so many of the favorites of my past. So it is inherently the favorite of today. It may change in the future. Oh yeah. I do this thing. Oh, sorry. Wait, hang on. A week is more suitable for my mates and I. Oh, a week. They're not passionate about. Oh, okay. But you're traveling with someone. That's great. Someone already talked about this before, about Thor, right? About Thor and pirate software. But there's a big coincidence. I have generally done this before. I've done this with teaching. So before Thor, but I would say if you enjoyed this in like software engineering or like game design and stuff, probably the default gold standard would be pirate software, right? Or is that what it's called? Yeah, pirate software. But for me, this is how I navigate. I navigate by speaking to myself, speaking, visualizing, seeing, talking, and also writing, because I have a natural fidget. So if I'm not like writing anything or doing something with my hand, my body's gonna bounce up and down. So I try not to do that too much. You'll probably see it if you ever look in the videos where if I'm not writing on screen and I'm talking for a very long time, my body is probably bouncing up and down. So a lot of times I like to tell a story with my writing. So whenever there's like a review, I tend to like draw a map. I like to draw arrows because I'm a biologist, or a molecular biologist specifically. So I think about pathways. So, you know, when I do a review, I go over like the summary, right? The summary bullet points. Then I go to a little to the left, and maybe I will split it up into, maybe I'll go into something personal or something professional, like objective a little bit, right? Things like that. So it makes it so that I'm navigating the ideas, and at the end of the journey, it'll look like it'll look like this on the screen. If anyone's been used to my digressions, it'll end up looking like this. But the thing is, you followed all of it through the journey, so naturally it means everything to you, and it sparks some intrigue, or for someone who just dropped in. So that's kind of the natural state of things. Well, I'm surprised because when it comes to like writing on the screen, right? Writing, I hope you know that I'm using a pen. Just so that we can clarify something. I am also using a pen. I hope you're not thinking I'm using a mouse, because that'd be, I don't know how that works. so I always use a pen, and learning language requires that I write. So I naturally do this already. Also, I don't know if you ever encountered a game called Osu, but that's a rhythm game that deals with basically aiming with the pen. So aiming with a pen. So naturally that happens as well. I combined so many of my skills that I've acquired over the years, so it's pretty natural. And then I do digital artwork now, so no digital artwork kind of flows into the whole writing on your screen and whatnot. And writing and talking at the same time is a very classical marry of the disciplines. Yeah, right. Oh, and I was about to tell you, like, someone told me I write like a child. So funny you say that, but someone said I write like a child. A child. And I told them, like, oh, okay, well, that's, I guess if I wrote like a child, it becomes more relatable, right? I mean, like, hey, if I'm writing like a child, then yeah, we'll make it work. You have a mate that played Os with a pen? Yeah, he got burnt out but really pursued it. Yeah. And now you're getting into the deep cuts of why I keep focusing on mental health from burnout, especially any type of internet trend. What is Duolingo? An internet trend. What's Osu? An internet trend. I pick up as many internet trends as I can from the indie scene. So things like Slay the Spire, Stardew Valley, Undertale. There's a lot of ways to gather trending things. And as long as you continue to participate in topical things powered by the internet, you'll be no stranger to hearing tales of burnout and overzealous passion that is void of self-love and investment forward in interpersonal relationship. So like a support system, developing support systems. I feel very disconcerted with the sidelining of having a lack of support system. So that's kind of where I go with. Some people ask me, why did I choose Duolingo? That's pretty much a good example of why I chose Duolingo. It's because of its influential reach and how strongly habit forming it is, actually. Someone, I beg to differ. It's more like scrambling of an obsessed scientist. Okay. Someone who is on to something and will stop at nothing to figure out a problem out. Eventually that person will solve that problem and reap the rewards of the hard work. Possibly. I wouldn't know what that looks like. It would be interesting. I think someone who really needs affirmation would really concern themselves with see, so the obsession, right? I would say I'm obsessed. However, this obsession is fueled by self-awareness. Oftentimes obsession can be non-sustainable, and even possibly completely narcissistic, to the point where you can start to rationalize all your actions as benevolent, right? Rationalize it as benevolent. So to ground myself in my hubris, right? To ground my hubris, I try to continue to challenge myself to be self-aware of my own obsessions. So I try not to like interlope a lot of times, right? Sometimes you need to play the observer. So this, in a very serious note, this is definitely the difference between an influencer, a obligatory influencer who requires affirmation, versus an influencer that is demonstrating something indirectly. So I'm not really planning on how I can influence people for an output. I'm demonstrating something that I do every single day without the need to even remind myself what the output is. So that's how I'm trying to keep my hubris intact, so that I don't become an influencer that is dependent on an output, which is something like reaping the rewards. I don't really do things expecting a reward. I consider that as luck. So if someone offers me a reward, like a compliment, right? It feels fantastic. I kid you not, it does feel fantastic. However, my response is, I'm incredibly lucky. It's not necessarily something that I said, I did this, I deserve this. I don't usually ever think of it that way. Like, I don't deserve luck. I gain and am gifted the generosity of other people by first offering generosity. So my generosity is to offer as many things of myself available, and if someone comes by and offers their generosity, then I am lucky in life, not deserving in life. I don't particularly think I deserve anything. I've already received so many things in my life. I don't need any more things, right? And the magic comes from a mutual, in my opinion, the magic comes from a mutual exchange of generosity. I'm actually stealing someone else's words. I can't spell generosity, but I'm actually alluding to John Green's recent vlog. He's a particular person that I listen to quite a lot. But he had a recent vlog about how art, the secret to art is the mutual exchange of generosity. from the creator, who then inspire other people to contribute to the creation. And that's when the magic happens, the mutual exchange of generosity. And this is effectively an art form, right? Feelings, emotional projection, expressions, resonance is ultimately an art form. It's the human condition. Emotions is an art form. Or it's the writing of a committed language learner, figuring out the extensive grammar concepts of Japanese and analyzing the structures. Yeah, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I'm a terrible language learner. So it's you demonstrating something to others. Yeah, I'm demonstrating how you can continue learning something. That's probably the bottom line. I can demonstrate how you can make something insignificant significant, but I am not you're not going to get really great at literally learning language with me, probably. Yeah, Fujonese works. Oh yeah, that's Fujonese. Yeah, you got it. So you do this expecting nothing. Anything that comes in return is appreciated and considered luck. Yeah. Like okay, right? If I was not privileged, then I would do this for money. You know, like what I mean is, I'm living a period in my life that I am not shackled by pragmatism. So I'm seizing the opportunity to having none of those social pressures. Which can happen in the near future, that I need to get a job, then I have to reprioritize, right? However, I wouldn't use this medium. Statistically, I would not use this medium as a way to make money. So things like money, career, credibility, and stuff, that would be built upon something else. This is purely for skill acquisition and experience. I jokingly phrase this a lot to the gamers out there, that I'm farming people for their stories and their ideas and the experience. Because the more I learn about different people in a pre-selected group, the more I'm able to execute on careers in the future, pivoting on careers, because the resource of my future career is going to be dealing with people. What kind of people? Well, anyone who's younger than me, because I doubt people who are more successful than me, who are incredibly healthy and functioning, yeah, they're not interested in what I have to say. They've already solved it for themselves. You have to get back to your studies, so may lurk for. Perfectly all right. Honestly, this was an exercise in playing chicken. So eventually, it's a weird flex, but I felt like I would have gone longer than you would. With it, because I don't want to stop investing, right? If you're here, I'm going to invest. So it was like a cat and mouse game at this point, but I really appreciate the long conversation, and I hope you don't mind, but obviously you'll probably see this section cut off somewhere to section displayed somewhere, just for some like fun things and conversation that people will reflect upon. Yep, for about an hour. That's about how long the digressions go. An hour to 2 hours. Yep. Keep it between 1 to 2 hours. Yeah, this has been a super insightful and welcoming convo. I hope the best for your stuff. Definitely we have a lot of content, to talk about. Like, I would love to hear your experiences, but it doesn't always have to be like an hour or 2 hours. I think the first conversation is always worth it. Like, I go harder on the first conversation. If someone stays, we're going to invest forward on the first impression. Good luck with your studies, and I will continue with mine. I can't wait to hear about your experience in China, though. That's a long ways, so I might even start learning Mandarin right before you go. You said November. Yeah, feel free. Feel free. There are a lot of these discussions roped off in the deep digression section. So if you want ever curious what type of shenanigans I get into all the time, it's nonstop. Like it's all grouped into the whenever I digress spot. So you can also reflect on this conversation if you want. Anyways, yeah, I'll let you to your studies and I will wrap it up today as well. Thanks for chilling. I love seeing where this is gonna go. All right.